The tensions focused on Ukraine have ratcheted up again. America is making its first major movement of troops since the escalation. 2,000 of them will be sent to Poland and Germany, deployed from the Fort Bragg military base in North Carolina. Also, 1,000 troops currently stationed in Germany will be moved to Romania. Here's the Pentagon making that announcement.
The United States stands shoulder to shoulder with our NATO allies. The current situation demands that we reinforce the deterrent and defensive posture on NATO's eastern flank. President Biden has been clear that the United States will respond to the growing threat to Europe's security and stability. I want to be very clear about something. These are not permanent moves. They are moves designed to respond to the current security environment. Moreover, these forces are not going to fight in Ukraine. They are going to ensure the robust defense of our NATO allies.
That's the Pentagon's description. Russia says the move is unjustified and destructive. And we know already America has 8,500 troops on heightened alert. That's part of NATO's response force, NATO being a defence alliance. And its Secretary General says our deployments send the message that NATO will do whatever is necessary to protect and defend all allies. And then this is Romania's president welcoming the American announcement.
We are
going through an extremely tense period in which the risks and threats to regional, European and Euro-Atlantic security, including Romania's security, have increased. There is a clear tendency to return to the policy of force and to challenge the current liberal international order, as well as the European security architecture built after the Cold War.
All of this is happening as a response to Russian military activity close to Ukraine. Satellite images show that in recent months, Russia's placed over 100,000 troops close to the Ukrainian border. And these pictures are from today. Russia has again been holding joint military drills in neighbouring Belarus. Despite all of this, though, Ukraine's foreign minister says Russia hasn't gathered enough forces to carry out a full invasion.
At this moment, by assessment of Ukraine and its partners, this number and composition of forces is not sufficient for a full-scale invasion. However, we keep vigilant, we keep monitoring further dynamics. I want to reiterate, Ukraine calls on Russia to withdraw the troops it amassed near our border, bring them back to their bases, stop intimidating Ukraine and the wider Euro-Atlantic community.
Russia's showing no appetite to do that. It's also denying it has any plans to invade. It does, though, have demands. They include no NATO membership for Ukraine, something Ukraine would like to happen. Russia also wants NATO to stop its expansion eastwards. America has not agreed to either demand. Well, let's speak to retired General Mark Kimmitt, who served both in the US Army and the State Department under President George W. Bush. Sir, thank you very much indeed for joining us. How do you assess this decision to move these 3,000 troops eastwards?
Well, I think more than anything else, it's a demonstration and no more. It demonstrates that America is willing to put people on the ground to defend its NATO ally. But I'm not sure that anybody should be celebrating in Ukraine based on what John Kirby said. We're not going to put them in Ukraine. We're not going to fight in Ukraine. So while it may make a difference to the NATO alliance, it certainly doesn't do anything for the Ukrainian government or the people.
Do you think those troops should be going into Ukraine?
Well, I think that's a political decision more than anything else. Number one, are we willing to defend a non-NATO ally against the Russians? And number two, are we willing to shed blood for a non-NATO ally and for a country that most people can't find on the map?
You say it's a political decision, but there are, of course, military calculations here. Do you think Ukraine would be able to defend itself without American troops within the country?
Well, it really depends on what the Russians want to do. Regardless of what the analysts say and the government official says, 150,000 troops is certainly enough to have a major impact against the Ukrainian army. Take a look at 1939. A very small element from the German army was able to bust through the French lines with absolutely no problem and cause their surrenders in a matter of weeks. So my assessment is that the Ukrainians might be able to fight a rearguard action or perhaps partisan warfare after the fact. But if the Russians are serious about this, I think they can take a majority of the country militarily, if not the entire country itself.
Now, I mentioned that you served the US Army in Europe, but you also served within the State Department, so you've seen the relationship between the politicians and the military leaders from both sides. Give us an insight into how that would work at this stage of an escalation.
Well, I think it's been sequential up to this point. The major effort right now, for better or worse, is diplomatic. The President and Tony Blinken think they can solve this problem without resorting to military force. But at the same time, the military is doing planning so that, as we used to say in NATO, that we will defend and, if prepared, we will fight to win. But again, that would only be in the in the context of NATO and our Article 5 agreements. I don't think that we will conduct either defensive or offensive operations inside Ukraine.
And bearing that in mind, and bearing in mind what you know about Russia and about Vladimir Putin, help our viewers around the world assess the seriousness of the point Europe has reached compared to other points of tension in recent decades.
Well, but again, I think it's important to understand that Putin is not focused primarily on the external issues, but it's more on the internal issues inside of Russia. He does have problems. He does have significant internal problems with his acceptance, the way that the Russian people embrace him. He has serious economic problems. He has serious demographic problems. So in many ways, analysts think that this simply may be a diversion from the problems that he's having at home.
Retired General Mark Kimmitt, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you for your time.
Certainly.
Now, across Europe, diplomacy is in high gear, as we've just been discussing. Boris Johnson met the Ukrainian president in Kiev on Tuesday, and then today, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte was in the Ukrainian capital as well, also calling for de-escalation.
President Zelensky and I, we agree that every effort must now be made to de-escalate the dangerous situation in which we find ourselves. And we believe that the only route to a solution is through de-escalation, diplomacy and dialogue.
Also today, Boris Johnson spoke with Vladimir Putin. We're told the Prime Minister stressed that any Russian incursion into Ukrainian territory would be a tragic miscalculation. But the Kremlin has signalled that it's not open to compromising on its demands. This is its press secretary speaking today.
It is worth talking to anyone. Russia, and even more so President Putin, is open for communication with everyone, even with those who are utterly confused and don't have a clear understanding of what's happening in our country. He's always ready to give an exhaustive explanation.
Well, let's speak to our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, who's been live with us each evening from Kiev this week. Lise, talk to me about American troops, please. Would the Ukrainian president like those troops not just in Eastern Europe, but actually inside Ukraine?
No. I think they understand that this is not on the cards, that this would be very provocative. We heard from Ukraine's foreign minister today. He said we are not expecting other countries to fight our wars. And he made a point of emphasizing that the more defensive weapons that Ukraine receives from its partners in the NATO alliance, the less possibility that they will be used. In other words, a strong Ukraine militarily, politically, financially is the best deterrence against any Russian aggression.
And Lise, just before I introduced you, we heard from Dmitry Peskov saying Vladimir Putin's always happy to give a full explanation of Russia's position. Given he said that, might we see some direct talks between Mr. Putin and some of the relevant world leaders?
Well, Mr. Putin has been a very busy man almost every day. A world leader calls him up. President Macron of France, who will soon make a trip to Moscow to see President Putin there, has had 2 telephone calls with the Russian leader. President Biden had a telephone call earlier this week, but Boris Johnson, as we've just been reporting. The only one which hasn't had one is President Zelensky of the Ukraine. And it is for that reason that President Zelensky said in the press conference last night with Boris Johnson that the Normandy format, as it's called, is one that Ukraine actually supports and believes could have a possible role in de-escalating this crisis, because it brings together Germany, France, Ukraine and Russia, one of the only places where possibly they'll talk to each other, and we expect the Normandy format to meet very soon to start playing its own role, or trying to play a role in doing what everyone talks about, but we're not seeing yet, is to de-escalate these tensions.
Now, Lise, whenever you come on Outside Source, we're often talking about conflicts or we're talking about diplomatic initiatives, but I also like to ask you about the day-to-day life of the places where you're reporting from. I wonder in Kiev at the moment, if I didn't know about all of this diplomatic activity, would I know that there was a military threat or the possibility of a military threat a few hundred miles away?
Well, you have to remember, first of all, that Ukraine is a huge country. It's the second biggest country after Russia and from the former Soviet Union. So we're a very long way away from what they refer to as the front lines. If you're an elderly couple living in eastern Ukraine, close to the Russian border, your life will have been turned upside down. My colleague Orla Guerin reported today a very sad story about a woman, Ludmila, who basically in her nightdress in the dead of night had to flee her home of 30 years. They feel day and night the visible presence of the Russian-backed separatists in their area. Donetsk, which we heard the Ukrainian president was talking about it yesterday, used to be a very vibrant city in the east, and now it is suffering because it is very much at the middle of all of these tensions. Here in Kiev, life goes on, but when you speak to Ukrainians, although it's a city, as you can see behind me, of such light and beauty, the bars are full, the restaurants are doing a great business, but the economy is suffering, the currency is down, even though President Zelensky spoke today that it was doing better. And we heard from several prominent individuals here that investors are staying away, and that explains why President Zelensky has been telling what he did at least last week, tried to urge everyone, calm down. The crisis is no worse now than it was a year ago.